Where does Fernando Mendoza actually rank among the quarterbacks drafted over the last 5 years, and why Ty Simpson shouldn't be a first round pick? We break it all down today in our 2026 NFL Draft quarterback rankings. Yes, welcome back to the NFL Draft Talk podcast. I'm Owain Jones, that's Stuart Taylor, and today we're ranking the quarterbacks in the 2026 NFL Draft class. Now, usually this is a position that everyone cares about, but this year it's a very different conversation. The depth just isn't there, and that just completely changes how teams are going to be approaching the position in this year's draft. But at the top, there's a clear number one. The real question is going to be how Fernando Mendoza stacks up against other prospects in recent classes, and whether teams are going to talk themselves into Ty Simpson, who probably shouldn't be going in round one. Stu, before we get straight to the rankings, how do you feel about the quarterback class overall?
Underwhelmed, I think is the way I would describe it. I think when we headed into this year, there was a lot of names that had potential,
Yep.
and they've kind of dropped off a little bit. They've kind of fallen off the radar a little bit. There was a lot. If you'll have seen these two early mock drafts that come out, you'll have seen a lot of names that you might recognize. But they're well away from that now. There's been a funny old year with some of these college quarterbacks, and um, I'm not as excited about it as I have been in other years about quarterback. But drafts often do get overly inflated by what's happening at quarterback, because a lot of fans just get really excited about what quarterback they're going to have. So if it's you this year needing a quarterback, I wouldn't get too excited unless you're maybe a Las Vegas Raiders fan.
Yeah. All right, let's get to the rankings then. We're each going to give our top five quarterbacks, 5 through to 1, and in this class, where guys get drafted will probably matter more than where we have them ranked themselves. And let's say we'll come back to Fernando Mendoza shortly, because he's the guy at the top. But let's start with the rankings. Who've you got as QB5?
Yeah, for me, it's one of those people that we talked about. It's Drew Aller, the
Okay.
quarterback from Penn State. Um, you seem a bit surprised on that one, so I'm
No, I
interested to see
do.
what your thoughts are.
Yeah, because I also have him at number 5.
Okay.
And I feel absolutely disgusting for it, I have to say. I just haven't fallen in love with with other guys, and um, yeah, I'll let you
Yeah,
go on him.
so
But he might be a quarterback 5, but he's still a late round flyer.
yeah, I mean, there was a lot of hype about Drew Aller a year or two ago, and there was talk about was he going to be someone who made the breakthrough and became one of these first round quarterbacks. Yeah, I think he's quite a way off that, and I would be surprised even if we heard his name on day two, really. Um, so 6'5", 230 odd pounds. He's got that frame and build that teams will like. He does have a good throwing velocity. He's got a good sets his base, and he's a competitive runner. Um, but he's had a not great couple of years, I think, from where he was a couple of years ago. I have a lot of concern about his kind of short area
Hmm.
accuracy. I think it's a bit of a concern. His ball placement on those, those things that are not sexy things, but those screens, slants, check downs. I just think it's off. He has a bit of a, as I say, when he talked about his footwork, he's got a solid base, but I think his footwork, he battles a bit, and he does revert to becoming a little bit flat-footed when he delivers the ball. Um, been a 3-year starter, but I still don't think he processes the field particularly well. Um, but he doesn't get that first read. His eyes tend to drop, and the play falls apart a little bit. Um, Someone who's a pocket passer his size, he really struggles with interior pressure, I think. Rather than kind of climb in the pocket and escaping at things that way, he tends to drift into the side. Um, and I wonder how much benefit he got with having Tyler Warren manufacturing a lot for him. The years previously didn't have that this year. Should he have come out a year earlier? Maybe his stock was a little bit higher
Yeah, there's
then.
no doubt there.
But yeah, there's a lot that he's got. Some things that coordinators will like. He's got the size. He's got um a big arm. He can run with the ball if need be, but I think he's a very much a developmental prospect for me at this stage.
Yeah, no, I totally agree, and we'll get to Ty Simpson that conversation later, but because I've got some real questions about that one. But Drew Aller's almost the opposite of what I want from Ty Simpson. That he's a big frame, he's a big arm, but he still has a long way to go in terms of growing as a decision maker and in his maturity as an on-field passer. I think he's physically gifted and he's got a high end arm talent and obviously the size, but there's severe inconsistencies in his vision, his mechanics, his processing, and that for me projects him as a late day three developmental gamble. And I, a different style of player, but I think the conversation around Jualo is very similar to what we had with Quinn Ewers last year in terms of
Mhm.
big arm, has the traits, but you just can't develop guys in the NFL anymore. It just doesn't happen, and that's why kids are staying in college longer. You framed the conversation there beautifully, Stu. I think some people have problems with us having him at QB5 because he deserves to be lower, and I would totally agree. But who are you going to put ahead of him? The conversation
Yeah,
here is,
that was my
yeah, it's
who goes above that. I don't know.
yeah, I don't want to say it could be that you have one of these guys ahead of you. You can tell me if you do. But Taylor Green from Arkansas, who's a great athlete, but is a appalling decision maker, has no accuracy whatsoever. He's a great athlete, but he doesn't have a quarterback mind currently, so you're going to have to develop him. The other guy you could potentially look at would be Cole Payton from NDSU. He was about to be a tight end before he played quarterback this season. Very limited as a starter, and you just can't play him in the NFL in year one. You just can't. The Taylor Green and Cole Payton are two guys that need to go to a developmental league, learn how to play the position properly, and then potentially get their shot. You can't do that in the NFL anymore. So I can understand why you think they're more talented guys than Joella. I get that, but the NFL can't develop quarterbacks from the sideline anymore. Not when in day three flyers like that. You know, if you take a guy in round one, you can give him the chance, but you're not giving chances to day three quarterbacks who are developmental. You can't afford to give them 4 years. And I saw this debate on a podcast I was listening to. I can't remember which one it was. It might have been the Todd McShay one, but they were saying that I'll let someone else draft them, and if they're any good, I'll sign them to a contract in 4 or 5 years' time. And I think that's completely the right way to be looking to it.
Yeah, I mean,
So
speaking for my own team, that's what's happened with Malik
yeah,
Willis.
yeah,
Yeah, he was drafted on day three. He's now making reasonable money and probably going to be a starter in Miami. Well, he's going to be the starter in Miami, but he's had to go through growing pains at Tennessee and then taking a step back and being developed at Green Bay before he's come on. Yeah, and Miami are now taking him and giving him a reasonable chunk of change.
yeah. So the path to these players being NFL starters is slim. So yeah, I have Drew Aller ahead of them because the arm
I
strength is yeah,
just for clarification, I don't have either of those ahead of Drew Allar either.
right. There's always a chance because it just depends on what you like, right? But yeah, there's something there. The ball security's good. There's just inconsistency with accuracy, mechanics, field vision. The NFL team's going to have to develop them. Do I feel confident an NFL team will? No. Would I draft Drew Aller? No. But we would have been better off doing a top four quarterbacks rather than top five. But I think that's the discussion about those later round guys. And I wouldn't even particularly be confident with them being backups, to be honest. Players like Luke Altmaier or Brennan Morton have potentially got to be the clipboard warriors that you think they might be long-term quarterback threes. But there's a real cluster of bad quarterback prospects, to be honest with you. Cole Payton, I feel like he has the potential to do something, but he needs another 2 years of starting ability before
Yeah, he's just and it's the level that he's played at. He
yeah,
is playing at that slightly lower college level, although he's playing at one of the better programs
yeah,
and his level. Yeah, there's still you know room for growth for him. There's a little bit there, and something you think, okay, there is the potential, but I wouldn't be confident in saying that. Yeah, I'm going to take him and realize that potential.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. What about 4 then? Who have you got as quarterback 4?
I have Garrett Nussmeier,
Okay,
quarterback from LSU.
I've got him at 3.
Again, okay, someone who was outed again, even this time maybe last
Mm-hmm.
year. There was the Nuss Bus, as they called it, this campaign about Garrett Nussmeier. He had a bit of a nightmare 2025, with medicals. He had an abdominal injury that wasn't initially diagnosed correctly, and he had some difficulties with mobility and throwing mechanics throughout the year. And to be fair to him, he played through 9 games, but LSU kind of stumbled, and then he was just shut down, for the rest of the year. The only real kind of clear diagnosis came out for him after the season actually ended about what exactly was going on there. Um, yeah, so there's a bit of confusion about what actually was happening with him. He did a bit better at the Senior Bowl, I think. He was a bit healthier in practice sessions. He got the game MVP honors. So I still think there is a little bit more to work with there than some of these other guys. He can spin the ball when he wants to and drive it down the field. He does have some touch on intermediate throws. Um, he does have a bit of a fire about him, and his teammates want to be
Yeah.
around him. But he is small. He's just around that 200-pound mark, 6'2". I think some of the issues he has, he really locked onto his first read quite because he sometimes does miss easier options because he's very focused on that first read. He sometimes does overhunt the big plays as well, where he tries to force balls into really tight windows rather than just taking what's given to him. I don't think he always reads post snap disguises particularly well from defenses, and he can be caught out a little bit there. And again, he's somebody who sometimes can just drift into trouble when he gets a little bit jumpy with that internal clock. Um, but yeah, I think just a little bit small, a little bit undersized. Um, Something there that maybe a backup moving forward. Who knows with Garrett Nussmeier, but there was potential again this time last year, and maybe is it just the injuries that's derailed him? I don't know.
Yeah, 6'2", 210 pounds at the combine. He's just say he is small, but I think he's a smart passer. He's a strong football IQ player who I think can be a drive has the drive management despite the size and accuracy limitations downfield to be a limited NFL player in terms of would I be happy having Garrett Nussmeier as a quarterback 3 who could be a spot starter, come in a pinch if I need to? Yeah, I feel like I could be comfortable with him doing that. Son of the Saints offense coordinator Doug Nussmeier, so he has that football brain. He has the understanding of pro concepts. Good distributor, keeps offenses on schedule. He's most effective in the intermediate passing area, but say the deep ball accuracy and his response to pressure limits his upside. I think he's able to read coverages and structure, sharp placement on intermediate throws, releases the ball on schedule as well, and has over the middle of the field. He's got quite clear field vision, and he has the mental toughness. There's no doubt about it. But yeah, his downfield accuracy, where he struggles to lead receivers open, whether that's vertically or on crosses, and he's got real narrow base and when it comes to trying to succeed under pressure. So that leads to placement errors. So there's definitely a big margin for error with Garrett Nussmeier. Is he going to be a starter? No, I don't think so. He'd be a player that I would potentially be looking at early on day 3. I wouldn't be taking him, any higher than that, even though I've got him as QB3 in this class. But I think his just natural understanding for the game, the understanding of pro concepts, is intermediate accuracy. He can be composure in structure. I don't need him to be Superman. I just need him if I am harrowed by injuries to be able to play him as a spot starter where he can just play on schedule for a game if I really need him to. And I've of quarterbacks in this class, I've been more confident of doing that with Garrett Nussmeier than others. But it is close between him and Carson Beck, who I'm guessing is you've got at 3.
Yeah,
Yeah,
correct. Um, I I like a little bit about Carson Beck, and it's not necessarily everything to do with play style. There's a chap who's been around the block. He's really experienced. At the big college program with Georgia, when he obviously had that big season in the SEC championship appearance, um, thought that he was going to be the next big thing. 2024 struggled a little bit.
yeah,
Georgia's protection wasn't the best. Then he had the elbow injury. Decided he was going to back himself and go to Miami, and had that championship game run, where he really had a bounce back, from the kind of issues that he had towards the end of his Georgia career. So he's got that resilience, mental toughness. He's been able to rebound from adversity, which I do think is important from quarterbacks, because these young guys, if they're not the elite of the elite, they're going to take knocks along the road, and it's important to show how they can come back from that. From a play point of view, he stands confident behind his pressure, confident behind his line when he's under pressure, and he can move laterally without losing that downfield focus. Um, he does have quite good anticipatory throws. He processes reasonably quickly. He's got nice compact mechanics, um, and he's got that clutch in him. He in critical moments, he's engineered game-winning drives and big things when everything's on the line in college football. But he's far from being a perfect prospect, as we know. And his deep ball actually, I think, for me, is quite inconsistent, and problematic. Um, his mobility in the pocket is a bit limited when he tends to shuffle and stride rather than explosive movement. Um, Protecting the football and making smart decisions, sometimes he's got to just be careful about that. Inside pressure, he does tend to release it a little bit early when there's inside pressure as well. And he sometimes struggles with reading coverage, particularly when they've got that rotating safeties. I think he struggles a little bit then as well. But he's got the right size of frame as well. He's kind of that prototypical passer. If you're going to take a flyer on anybody in the later rounds, why not Carson Beck?
yeah, totally agree. I have him kind of in the same range as Nussmeier. Be early day 3 is what I would be doing. Would someone take him on day 2? Yeah, potentially. The word that I would use to sum up Carson Beck is predictable, both in good and bad ways. He's
that's fair.
His mechanics are fairly polished. He's a touch orientated pocket passer who I think can operate an NFL offense on schedule when he needs to, but his ceiling is definitely capped by his inability or sensitivity to pressure. And he's very conservative with his aggression when throwing the ball vertically, and he's definitely limited in his mobility. But yeah, his mechanics are smooth, they're repeatable. He has natural touch downfield. He's effective when operating in rhythm, but from a clean pocket. But yeah, that pressure response and physical limitations mean that he's restrained on his upside. In more on that he's minimal threat as a runner. He can't really extend plays. And his effectiveness, I think, is tied to rhythm and the protection that he's offered, because he lacks the tools to almost transcend the position like you see with modern day NFL quarterbacks. But yeah, he excels in the quick game with timing concepts. So you get him in the right scheme, you can see how he's going to be successful. He's composed when the looks are clean. He has good route anticipation. He's understand for spacing and landmarks when he is kept clean. The problem is when it breaks down. But it's 3 consecutive 3,000-yard seasons at Georgia and of course at Miami as well. Has been very successful as college quarterbacks goes. He's intelligent as well. That you could see him being an NFL backup for a fair few years, and that's enough to warrant a decent selection in this draft, I think.
Yeah, I think I would describe him as a little bit robotic in that he does the same thing regardless of the situation.
Yeah.
He doesn't have that ability to kind of deviate, and if something happens and breaks down, he doesn't really have that ability to
Yeah.
do something different and change what he's doing. So when it's all going well, it's all right.
Yeah.
It's when that things don't go the way you anticipate that I don't think he's got the ability to change his focus or do something unexpected.
Yeah. No, I think that's completely fair. So I used the word predictable, use robotic, but I think we see him the same way there.
Same.
It's good in a way because NFL, whether it's head coaches or position coaches, know what they're going to get from him almost every time. But unfortunately, so did the defense the majority of the time, especially when they're able to get pressure on. If you can put pressure on him, he's going to struggle. Quick pause before we get into the rest of the podcast. If you're enjoying these draft conversations, make sure you're subscribed and give the video a like. It's the best way to support the channel. All right, let's get back to it. Quarterback 2 then, let's move on. Ty Simpson, I'm guessing. It would be say we are not the type of people who are going to deviate from the consensus. There's many of them if you go on social media, but we're not going to be two of them, shall we say. First year as a starter in 2025, and I think that's the biggest issue with Ty Simpson. There's a lot there to like in terms of strengths. He's a highly intelligent, coachable quarterback who's got advanced processing and really commandful traits, but is limited arm talent and has modest physical abilities, which for me means I project him as a reliable NFL backup rather than a long-term starter that started 15 games in college. He's mentally ahead of that experience level, and he's able to diagnose downfield, and he wins within structure. He's able to anticipate. He has good situational awareness, but a severe lack of arm strength and dynamic traits really cap the potential upside of him at the next level. And he's unlikely to elevate an offense through his traits. He's more one of those quarterbacks who's going to be able to stabilize within structure when he's called upon, and that's what I like him for. So I think he sees the field clearly, pre and post snap, understands defensive intent, throws with timing, manages down and distance effectively. His pocket discipline's really good. He keeps his eyes downfield and avoids unnecessarily escaping the pocket, but that's because he doesn't really have the ability to. That's probably underselling him a little bit. He does have some ability to him, but I just don't really want him doing that if he doesn't need to. His consistent placement in the quick game on slants and hitches and crosses, repeatable delivery as well, and just really he's a game executor when he's drawn upon. There's clear evidence of him being prepared. He's got a good attention to detail, and he's mature and composed despite the lack of starts that he has. My problem with him is if you take Ty Simpson, and we're talking about him potentially being a borderline first round player here because he has been mentioned in those circles, you're effectively drafting a small, older, inexperienced, injury prone quarterback. He's going to be 24 as a rookie. He's only had 15 starts in those games, suffered a lower back injury against South Carolina, subsequently had gastritis, then suffered an elbow injury in the SEC championship game, then a broken rib against Indiana. Props to him for seeing it all out. To be, I will give him credit for that, but you have to question potential durability at the next level. Meanwhile, say he's got a small frame, 6'1", 211 pounds, and he's got that underwhelming arm strength. That he's 20th percentile in height, 17th percentile in weight, lacks velocity on his throws, just functional as an athlete, nothing more than that. And I think he is more conservative than aggressive throwing the ball downfield. Did suffer with a lot of drops last season. That I will note that it was 3,567 passing yards in 15 games, and he had the most drops. PFF credited him with the most drops of any quarterback in 2025 that he just didn't have. Apart from Jeremy Bernard, he didn't really have the receiving network that you would expect from Alabama quarterbacks. We'll see how they bounce back in 2026. But the last thing there for me is that I just don't think you can take him in the first round. The list of players to be drafted in the first round since the year 2000 with less than 600 career passing attempts, and excluding their JUCO seasons, is long. But listen to the names here. You've got Cam Newton, Mike Vick, Trey Lance, Anthony Richardson, Mark Sanchez, Kyler Murray, Mac Jones, Achilles Smith, Mitch Trubisky, Carson Wentz, Alex Smith, Dwayne Haskins. Now, there's some names there that have had success, like Cam Newton, Alex Smith, but most of that list didn't live up to the hype, and they just didn't have the ability, and they weren't developed enough. We're going back to the Drew Allar conversation we had, 20 minutes ago, is that a lot of those were developmental names, and the NFL just can't afford to give you that time anymore. You can sit for a season, yes, but if you need 2 or 3, you just can't do it in the NFL. And then you pair that with him being 24. He's just a backup to me.
Yeah. Unless you're handpicked by the Green Bay Packers, you ain't getting 3 years to sit.
Yeah.
No quarterback is getting that. I think for me, he's very much a case of a neck up, neck down quarterback.
Yeah,
What I mean by that is, I think from the neck up, he's really, really good.
Yeah.
He works through his progressions really quickly. He trusts his eyes. His pre-snap, he communicates well. He can make adjustments. When he climbs the pocket, he uses his eyes well. He's able to drop balls in over linebackers. But I think his athleticism and his just overall physicality will let him down longer term. He's not big. He's at 6'1".
Yeah.
He's got shorter arms. They fall below that kind of classical quarterback threshold. His arm strength is functional, and he can throw some tight windows. But you're not going to be wowed if you're looking at Ty Simpson's arm. His confidence seemed to just go at the second half of the season as well.
It was just hurt.
Alabama were not
after that South Carolina game, which was 6 games in, was it?
Yeah,
and you suffered that lower back injury, and then it was suffering with gastritis that seemed to
Alabama
really affect the season.
Alabama just weren't the Alabama of usual lore. They didn't have that 4 or 5 deep wide receivers and as strong as offensive line. But I do really worry about quarterbacks with such few starts, going highly. We've seen it before. It just doesn't seem to work for me. I just don't think there's enough there. I'm honestly surprised that he came out this year. Having had the 1-year starter, he could have went back. There was NIL money on the table for him to go elsewhere as well. There must have been someone having a word in his ear that you could go highly.
Yeah.
So there is definite out there. But for me, if you want Ty Simpson and you want to develop him and you want to pick him in the second round, if you've got a couple of picks, I'd be comfortable enough with that. Yeah. The teams that have 2 first-round picks, I think, have such, apart from LA, Rams, have such deficiencies in their roster. You're looking at Cleveland, you're looking at Miami. Who else has got? There's Jets. Okay, the Chiefs are not going to be interested, but there's a few the other teams that could be interested. They just have such other deficiencies that I would rather spend a first-round pick doing other things than taking Ty Simpson.
Does someone jump in for him?
At the bottom of round 1.
Yeah. It's just someone like Arizona or maybe the Jets try and package a couple of picks to get
Arizona,
25, something like that.
There's been a lot of chat about is Arizona interested, and they only have a couple of spots to jump up, so it's not beyond the realms of possible. We had the conversation last year. We didn't think Jackson Dart was a round 1 quarterback, and the Giants, pulled that trigger. So it wouldn't surprise me if someone did it. It wouldn't be for me though.
No, totally agree. If you're a team like Arizona, I'd rather ride the Jacoby Brissett wave for a season and just see where you end up for next season. Which, as I say, tell me if you've heard this before, but is looking like it's going to be a better year for quarterbacks next season. But we'll see. We said that a year ago. We'll see what happens. Finally, number 1, a quarterback that is easy to fall in love with, Fernando Mendoza.
Are you in love with him?
I think he's a very, very good quarterback who is worthy of the number 1 selection. The conversation here is there are certainly limitations to his game, but if I was to rank him amongst quarterbacks who have been taken in the last 5 years, I would certainly have Caleb Williams ahead of him. I would certainly have Trevor Lawrence ahead of him, and I would certainly have Drake May ahead of him. I think there's conversations to be had whether he's the next guy, though. I like him much better than I do Cam Ward.
Okay.
That's not even a conversation to me. I'm not. Even when you go back and you can watch that episode, I wasn't a massive fan of Cam Ward then. That he was ranked in like between, I can't remember the exact number, between, he was in the 20s anyway on my big board. I wasn't a huge Cam Ward fan. He was quite clearly the quarterback one there, but if he was in this class, I would certainly have Mendoza ahead of him. The Kenny Pickett draft you can just write off. That Jaden Daniels, look, he's been very good in the NFL, but as a prospect coming out, I certainly had concerns over his durability. Yeah, I think he would probably be fourth on that list.
I really like him. I just haven't fallen in love yet.
And that's fair.
And that's no decrying Fernando Mendoza. Yes, I think certainly in this draft, he is worthy of a number one pick, and I think for the team that are picking number one, he's definitely worth a number one pick. Because how often do you get the opportunity to make a number one pick that you feel, yeah, I think we've done all right there.
Yeah.
It doesn't happen very often. The Raiders haven't been great for a long time, but they've not had the number one pick. They've not been, so it doesn't cut unless you're Cleveland, who've had a few in the past few years. It doesn't come around that very much often. So I think you really have to jump on it when you've got the chance, when you feel comfortable with him. I mean, there's an awful lot to like with him. I think that his processing is quite advanced for a prospect coming out. He's got really good ball placement. I think that's a good strength of his. He's got touch on that back shoulder throws. He anticipates into tight windows. He's got enough arm talent to cover the full field. Modern NFL, he operates the RPO game really well. I think that's something that we see more and more coming into the NFL from the college game. Can pick up first downs with his legs, so he's a functional enough athlete. I don't think he's a special runner or anything at all, but he can do more than enough. He's tough in the pocket. He's willing to stand and deliver on time. He protects the football really well. Only 6 interceptions on 379 passes last year. Played really well in the big games. He's led a program to a national championship with a 16-0 record. Heisman Trophy winner. He's got all the credentials. I think that he was definitely in a real scheme that created a lot of completions for him, with good wide receivers. So that's a question. He had to make those throws. He had to deal with it, but it's something that I think is just going to linger about there. He doesn't move defenders hugely well with his eyes, I don't think yet, but I think it's something that can come. And when he gets flushed from the pocket, his footwork can get a little bit trickier, which can affect him on off-platform throws. He's not the most dynamic of scramblers, and I think that he's not the most flashy and the most creative of quarterbacks. But I think if you put him in the right spot, in the right situation, timing, play action, quick game concept, I think he can execute all those at a very, very high level. Will he ever become a top 5 NFL quarterback? I have a bit of questions about that. Will he be a successful NFL quarterback? I think so.
Yeah, I think that's the way to phrase it, actually, because in terms of, to come back at you on a couple of bits there, that he turned it on when it mattered. That I completely know what you're saying about not being able to lead receivers open when I'm trying to, with his eyes, manipulate defenses. But when the game was on the line, he made the plays when it mattered. Oh my God, does he have a set of balls on him? He took shot after shot, and he still came back. And when the game was on the line, he's able to make the plays to seal the wins. And I think the leadership he'll bring to the Raiders, both on and off the field, that he's got the right mentality to be under centre, make the plays when it matters, and almost call out his teammates when he needs to, in terms of being able to look. We should be winning these games. The Raiders need someone who knows how to win. They need someone who can win games, and Fernando Mendoza has shown time and time again that he can do that. And then off the field, that's the type of personality you want. That isn't flashy, but he will set an example every day when he goes into training. How, in terms of the notes, if I should go through them, that I think he's a mentally composed, rhythm-controlled quarterback with franchise-defining, franchise-level processing, anticipation, and leadership traits who project as a long-term NFL starter. High-level process, as I just said, pre- and post-snap his command, wins with anticipation, he has control over the structure, he has clarity in his decision-making. Yes, his physical traits are sufficient, is the word that I used, but that mental makeup that he has really drives that ceiling higher than it maybe should be. His athletic traits say it should be. He's 6'4", 236 pounds. Great processing speed, diagnoses coverages and leverage immediately. Consistently arrives at the correct answer in his decision making without any wasted movement or hesitation. Releases the balls before windows fully materialise and shows advanced trust in his routes and his receivers. It was able to manipulate protections actively as well pre-snap, identifies pressure indicators, stands tall in the pocket with that 6'4" frame, senses edge and interior pressure, and has just enough movement and mobility to escape and make things happen. I think he's a better runner than he's maybe given credit for, although say he's not flashy. He's just, he's not necessarily someone you want doing designed runs, but has more than enough athleticism to get the kind of 10-yard gains if the play breaks down when need to. Almost like a Matt Ryan-esque quarterback is what I see with Fernando Mendoza. And that's probably the comp that I would have for him, although I don't really like doing comparisons. That's kind of, I think that's the type of player you're getting here. His mechanics are compact, to say, and then he's clean, delivering the football, commands in the huddle, responds positively to adversity, has composure in high leverage moments. He's a clear tone setter on and off the field, and I think his intelligence is just, and his preparation's evident in every game, that he anticipates defensive counters. He knows what defenses are going to do because he studied the tape. That he's playing chess almost, because he's anticipating all the time. He's adjusting to what he needs to because he sees it. Weaknesses for him: his arm talent is functional rather than overpowering. He doesn't have the elasticity. There's the word that's being bounded around at the moment. He doesn't have the ability to throw from all sorts of different angles, and he relies on the timing of his mechanics and the anticipation rather than being a pure velocity thrower. And being explosive with his arm talent, but he just doesn't need to be that. His mobility is adequate, but not necessarily dynamic. But I don't think either of those limitations prevents him being a high-level NFL player, given how consistently he wins pre-snap and on schedule. The one concern that I have is that he will have to adapt to be able to play under centre in the NFL. Look at what Kubiak did with Sam Darnold at the Seahawks last year. Darnold played under centre 33% of the time in 2025, and that's obviously in Kubiak's system, who's now the head coach in Las Vegas. Mendoza only has 5 dropbacks from under centre his entire college career, so that's something that he's going to have to learn with. But luckily, he's already training under Brian Griese, who's instilling that Raiders Kubiak playbook into Mendoza in this pre-draft process. Griese was with Kubiak at the 49ers on their coaching staff in 2023, and the Raiders are using him as almost a de facto trainer to get Mendoza ready to be in there. So he's already been drafted pretty much. He's on the calls and the time of being taken to instill what they're expecting from him already. He'll be familiar with the verbiage. He'll be familiar with the offensive concepts that are going to be expected in the Kubiak system. So I think does he play day one with Kirk Cousins there now? Probably not. There's no reason to rush him. He can wait 4 or 5 games. I'm not a massive fan of playing them from game one, just because it's such a big jump from the college to the NFL level, despite all the games that Mendoza's played in. But just being able to take a couple of games to understand, pre-game and the locker room, how just putting everything together, and then the game they you put them into, they're completely ready to go. They're not necessarily overwhelmed, although I'm sure Mendoza's not the type of prospect to be. But I don't. I certainly would advocate for him sitting a couple of games, especially with Kirk Cousins there. I think Kirk Cousins knows what he is at this point in the career, and will be a good mentor for Mendoza. And say that's that between whether it's talk about Atlanta quarterbacks in terms of Matt Ryan and Kirk Cousins, but those two names are the type of quarterback that Fernando Mendoza is going to be. So he's, what a pro to be learning behind. So yeah, I would be. I don't know what you think, Stu. I would be playing Kirk Cousins if able to, at least for a couple of games, while Fernando Mendoza just gets completely up to speed. But yeah, I think probably after unless they're on a roll with Cousins in the centre, you see Mendoza starting by say week 6. But I would certainly advocate for him maybe sitting for a couple of games at the start of the season.
Yeah, I maybe sound like I'm a Mendoza hater, and I'm definitely
No.
not. I do really like him. I think he's just a slow burner for me.
Yeah,
I
it's because
haven't
he doesn't have
really.
this great athletic thing. You
Yeah,
don't put on
maybe
the
it is.
tape and go,
Just
"This is a number one overall pick." But
yeah, I think that's what it is. Yeah, he hasn't quite stoked that
yeah,
fires of excitement yet. But if in a we were talking about things in a couple of years, and I think Fernando Mendoza is a great quarterback. I won't be surprised
yeah,
by any stretch of imagination, because I do think there's a really good prospect in there. And maybe it's just, I don't know, is it just that excitement fact? Is it maybe a bit of, we've known he's going to be number one since
mm-hmm,
the end of the season?
yeah,
Have I got a little bit of fatigue? He's clearly the number one quarterback in this class. I don't think there's any debate from me. I think he's miles ahead of where Ty Simpson is at the moment. I think that gap is huge. Um, where would I rank him in other years? I don't know. I would have to go through and rank them all properly. Um, I think he's just a slow burner for me. I just don't. I'm not going to anoint him the
yeah.
greatest quarterback I've ever seen in my life, but I'm not going to say he's terrible either. I think he's well worthy of the number one pick. Just don't make us wait the full now 8 minutes on
Yeah.
a week Thursday.
Yeah, and I suppose that I do agree with something that say I do think he's a really good prospect, and it seems like I'm more excited about him than you are. But I certainly think maybe because the conversation there hasn't really been a conversation about who's going to be the number one
Yeah,
overall pick. That I don't know if there's unrealistic expectations on his shoulders going into his rookie season. That it's not like
yeah,
we've had the conversations being like, this guy's going to be the next whatever, like we have with whether it was Caleb Williams and there's comparisons to Patrick Mahomes, or there just hasn't been that with
hmm
Fernando Mendoza. So that might actually be a good thing for him and for the Raiders going into the 2026 season. That I don't think there's these stupid expectations on his
hmm
shoulders. Look, he's expected to be good. He's the number one overall pick. That if you're a number one overall pick, you're expected to be good. But I'm not hearing conversations about we're expecting him to be the best quarterback in the NFL in 3 years' time, like there was with Trevor Lawrence and with Caleb Williams. Because I
yeah.
don't think we're talking about a different tier of quarterback there, aren't we? Um,
Yeah, and I think that, as you rightly say, long term for him, I think that's not a bad thing, and I think that the Raiders are trying to put him in a good position as
yeah,
well. They have brought in a veteran, someone that knows how to operate an NFL offense.
yeah,
That they don't, if all goes well, they don't have to rush him, and they do have connections with greatest of all time.
yeah,
He knows, you know, and I don't, Tom Brady's not going to be sitting with him all day, every day, coaching him on how to be a quarterback. But there is that influence there
mm-hmm,
that he knows what, preparation, if nothing else.
yeah,
Tom Brady was an elite preparer for everything. He was always um, keyed in on what was happening, made sure he was prepared, made sure he was in the best physical condition he could be for a long time. And those kind of things will be filtered down through that organization to Mendoza as well.
yeah,
I think they are going to try and put him in as good a position as they can to make him succeed as well.
Yeah, I think Mendoza's mature enough to heed that advice as well. There'd be some quarterbacks coming out where they'd be like, "No, I'm going to do this my way." I don't get that sense from Mendoza at all. I think anything that any veteran is going to say to Fernando Mendoza, he's going to take it on board. He seems like a mature, humble, responsible guy. That's how he comes across on the field and off the field as well. But he has the balls and he has the leadership and he has the maturity to take a team on his back. So when I say humble, I don't mean in terms of he's kind of in the shadows. I don't think he's gonna be that, but he has kind of the sense and self-awareness to know what he has to do to be great.
Yeah, and I think that as well, that maturity, leadership, I think he is that kind of quarterback that knows that he doesn't have to be the best quarterback in the NFL and dazzle everybody by Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
You know, if he sits and learns and listens and takes everything on board and uses what he's already got, I think he's mature enough to know and understand that I'm going to be a player who's going to be in this league 10, 15 years. I don't have to rush it all and do it all tomorrow.
Yeah, absolutely, totally agree. That was a really good conversation on Mendoza there, actually. I think we spent about 20 minutes on Fernando Mendoza there, but I think it was a really good conversation and a way to sum up what's happened in the pre-draft process. We've spoken about a few quarterbacks. Is there any other... a stupid question, but is there any other quarterbacks you want to mention? You can say no.
Yeah, there's just a gaggle of names that people might have heard of, but the ones that fallen off the face of the earth, like Cade Klubnik is floating around there. There's Diego Pavia, people have spoken about, but he's this little tiny quarterback who's going to be undrafted. Developmental guy, maybe someone who's got kind of the right stature and things. Sawyer Robertson is a name.
He's maybe not
might be be someone who, if you're taking a flyer on whatever day, whatever round on day 3 that he is available. He's someone who's got some traits that are workable, but he's very inconsistent and he's got a lot of turnover where he plays, and there's development to be had there. But again, I'm not going to rush to draft him. And if he was somebody that was a priority for undrafted free agent for you, somebody like that. But there's just a gaggle of names that I'm not wonderfully excited about.
Yeah,
how about yourself?
Yeah, no, there's no other names I want to bring up. I would just say that we've spoken about on previous episodes about how kind of early to mid day 3, that kind of round 5 onwards, I've used the word shallow in terms of the draft because there really isn't a lot of talent available later on day 3, kind of from round 5 onwards. That a lot of those players aren't going to end up making teams. So you may see some teams when it gets to the 6th round who normally would go, we would be picking, we'll take a chance on an athlete or someone that we could potentially develop at another, whether it's a receiver or a running back. There might be teams willing to take a chance on a quarterback because if he's not on the team in 18 months, 24 months time, it's not really that big of a deal because the other player would be drafting probably wouldn't be on the team anyway. So we might as well get him in house and see what we've got. So we may actually see a handful of these guys drafted in the back end that usually wouldn't be.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
Yeah. Well, there we have it then, our 2026 NFL Draft quarterback rankings. Let us know what your top 5 is in the comments, especially in this class. Like we said, where opinions are going to be all over the place. It'll be really interesting to see what you think. And if you've been following the ranking series, make sure you're subscribed. Every position is now done, dusted, live on the YouTube channel. So go and check all the other ones out if you've missed any. And luckily, if you're not sold on this quarterback class, you might not have to wait that long because a better one could be round the corner. You never know. Jets and Dolphins fans, the 2027 class is only a year away. And
how many times have we said that?
on that bombshell, we'll see you next time for some more NFL Draft Talk.